We all accept.
Great, thank you.
Okay, let me get my screen shared. Okay, great. So, as we kind of already started talking a little bit about, is the idea of being professional in our branding can get in the way. So, I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this tonight. First off, I am Lisa. I focus on branding that brings out the soul of your business. My sweet spot is working with coaches, consultants, and creatives. I built my career working on global brands such as Samsung, New Balance, Volvo in New York City before starting my own business. And outside of work, I'm obsessed with Formula One racing and natural artisan perfume. And creatively, I dabble in painting, interior design, and perfume making. So that's just a little snapshot of me. So, the power of a brand. When we hear branding, I think the first thing people typically think about is a logo, but there is way more to it than that. So, when we think about a brand, it actually creates recognition for you and your business. It's what helps it be memorable. So yes, the logo is the first thing we see, the business name or your name is the first thing we hear, but there's a lot that goes into that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Your brand also differentiates yourself in the marketplace. So if there's, let's say 20 interior designers, 20 painters, 20 accountants, 20 online courses. Our brand is what helps differentiate us from all the other people out there. And it's also the thing that helps us be taken seriously as a professional. So I'm going to use professional two ways tonight. Being taken seriously as a professional versus being professional with our branding. So being taken seriously as a professional means that your audience, your client, your customers, they have confidence in what you're offering and delivering. And it also can enable more premium pricing. So when someone takes you seriously as a professional, that's the benefit of that. Your brand also helps people self-identify. Hey, this is for me. It's that hell yes versus nah, they're okay. And your brand is also a tool to help build that know, like, and trust factor. It's the thing that can build connection. So yes, name and logo are the cornerstone. And you can be doing business as your name, right? These are brands I've done here in Charlotte where the individual's name is the focus. In some of the cases, they say what their area of expertise is, and some people are just going by their name. You can also use a name that's descriptive or expressive. So, like Alignment Legal, it's descriptive of the industry, and alignment is expressive of the way they operate. The hub, the boost pad, these are all things that both in what you're seeing and how it's worded helps give you a sense of what it's about. The hub Maximize the Magic is actually about Disney planning. So we use the color palette of like the Epcot at night, this gradient that happens with their lighting. And of course, Disney magic. So the tagline reflects that. Your business name can actually be created from acronyms like the CHM Collective. CHM stands for Circle, Heart, and Mind. Margic is totally a made up word, and Crescents is a mashup of crest and essence. So your brand the names, there's a lot of different ways of approaching it, and it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But logos are rarely used in isolation. We think about them, we think that they have to do so much heavy lifting, but actually there's so many things that get surrounded around a logo, and it's way bigger. So I like to break it down into these three categories. We have your brand strategy, and that's the invisible part of your brand. It's all those decisions that you're making behind the scenes. We get your brand language. That's the verbal parts of your brand. That's the attitude that you're projecting with your words and speaking. The visual parts of your brand that can also help, whether it's the brand itself or the brand, and if you are working in a creative medium. The brand guide is what helps your brand be consistent. And what your brand experience is what the clients are actually experiencing when they're interacting with you. I want to note, I see there's a comment in the chat and I haven't looked at what it is yet, but I wanted to note along the way, if you guys have any questions, any clarifying questions, like what I mean by something, please do shout it out or put it in the chat, because I want to make sure that as I'm going, we don't have any hangups of like, oh, what do you mean by that? I think it's really important to try to remove as much jargon as possible. Like these terms, they do mean something. That's why I'm trying to explain them as I go. But if I'm, so close to it and I know exactly what I mean, but it's not clear to you, please let me know. And also, if there's anything in the chat that you guys want me to know, just flag me, because I'm not going to be checking the chat as I'm going. Just
I'll help you with that, Lisa.
Okay, I appreciate
We're
that.
good. You can keep going.
Okay. So we're going to come back at the end to these 5 categories. But in the meantime, you can see I'm just going to use myself as an example through some of this. You can see how there's way more here than just my logo. So the focus of my business, branding that brings out the soul of your business. You start getting a feel for my vibe, my tone of voice. I talk about reflecting your visions, values, and vibe. I talk about hell yes. So the tone of voice is much more informal, casual, and the idea of, even at the bottom, I don't know if you can see it, a design to last. I'll reference something in that section talking about, fast fashion branding. Like what I'm doing is the opposite of fast fashion branding. I'm doing something that's built to last. So you get a feel for colors, you get a feel for the photography, right? So thinking about your brand as this ecosystem, I think is a really helpful way to think of it. Okay, so here's where we get into this whole professional thing. The most common question or most common thing that I am over and over told is when I'm doing brand strategy with people and I ask them about, how they picture their brand, what they want to be known for, it's always professional. I want to be known as professional. But your brand being known as a professional, it's different than you being professional. So let's get into the pitfalls of the whole thing around professional. So first off, professional is ambiguous. I say that word, what do you mean? If I show up and I want to hire a personal trainer, it would be really weird if he showed up in a suit and he thought that's what's professional, right? So professional for him is going to be showing up in gym clothes, right? If I need a lawyer because I'm going to court, I'm gonna assume like, oh, well, we're going to court, we have to be a little more dressed up and polished, right? But professional is ambiguous in what we mean by it. Professionals also playing it safe, and professionals relative. Again, that whole ambiguous, like we don't really know. It depends on the situation. So let's go a little deeper with each. The ambiguity. It actually leads your brand to being generic. Like if you're so focused on the term professional, you're missing a strong point of view with your brand and actually what you stand for. I think people are so scared of wanting to please everybody that they end up attracting nobody because they're playing it so like what they think the narrow confines of what professional means. So you want to have a strong point of view. You want your prospective clients to say hell yes or hell no. Like hell no is just as good, because what it does is it's weeding out the people who aren't right for you. Being meh makes you forgettable. So if someone's not having any kind of response, they're just like, yeah, that was okay. It doesn't allow there to be a strong reason to hire you or not hire you. Second, professionals playing it safe. So you become a conformist. Your default approach becomes that conformity. You focus on what your competitors are doing and you copy them. And it might not be in the creative work you're doing, but how you package it, what it looks like. How many times do we see trends come and go where, there's a period of time like everything's in like boho colors and a scripty font. And like you think about all the people using that and they all start looking the same. That looks like they're using a template for their business. And to your prospective clients, then you don't stand out in any way. You actually become invisible. Oh, I just paused for a second. Can you guys hear me? I froze.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good, good,
Yep.
good, good. And then lastly, professional's relative. So you're chasing the intangible. Like, what do we really mean? You think you'll know it when you hear it or you see it, but there's no clear way to identify it. You can get caught up in that whole analysis paralysis cycle. You can get into that whole indecision fatigue. And in the meantime, you're kind of wasting your opportunity to be connecting with clients here and now, and they are missing that benefit of working with you. So do you guys have any questions on these 3 points? Okay, great. Because really, what I discovered over and over is at the heart, people wanting to be professional is simply a desire to be seen as qualified, trustworthy, and legitimate. So if I have 3 adjectives to describe my brand, professional is never going to be one of them. I'm professional. The work I provide is professional, but the description of my brand and my brand personality and how I want to approach my language with clients, you'll see the language through here. It's informal, and that's intentional. So when you actually think about a brand now from that standpoint, so we want to stand out in, I'm sorry, I froze again. Can you guys hear me? That's so
Yes,
odd.
your screen is freezing here and there, but we
Okay,
can definitely hear you.
perfect.
Yeah, Lisa, the audio is coming through without an interruption.
Perfect. Okay, great. So when we actually start looking at, the brands, the logos, the names, it's really just that every business, every creator is going to have a different approach of what matters to them, how they want to present themselves visually, verbally, all that stuff. And so any of these brands are going to stand up against other brands out there because they have a distinctive point of view in both what it looks like and it sounds like. So the core of this really then is to be strategic, be willing to take risks, and to be authentic. So, what questions do you guys have around this idea of being authentic, being strategic, and taking risks just at this point in the conversation? No questions? Okay,
Feel free to
great.
throw any in the chat. I'll help you with that if
Okay,
anyone has
great.
questions.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times we, let's say, go to the authentic for a second. A lot of times we feel like, oh, being authentic means that we have to share every thought we have or everything on social media, or if you have a blog, you're like spilling your guts out. Authenticity is really about providing the information at the right level that your audience needs. So we kind of think about it from the standpoint of the public at large. Yeah, you want to have people be attracted to your brand and your business. You want to be positioning yourself, saying things, showing things in a way that the public can say, oh, I want to take that next step further. When you get to the client level, that's where you're going to be potentially sharing more information, more access, right? To whether it's your product, your service, your course, and the kind of things that you're saying, you're going a bit deeper and you may be sharing more personal examples. Like what I may say here, you guys aren't my clients, but you're my audience. You're here for a reason. So, like, there might be things that I would share here that I might not just say flat out on social media or what I might show you. And then when you think about what's your inner circle, and this is where I think about it's the trusted resources that you can turn to for guidance, support when you're going through the challenges and the fears. So, for example, that could be a mastermind, that could be your bookkeeper, your business coach, it could be a small community cohort that you guys have. Those are the places where you can be authentic at every level, but it doesn't mean that you have to give away the farm or actually spill your guts to the public at large.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I feel like as creatives, when you're kind of starting out, You're starting out sort of as generalist in terms of who your clients are. So for
Mhm.
example, if you're a photographer, maybe you're doing wedding photography, you're doing portraits, you're doing landscape, doing all sorts of things.
Mhm.
So how would you go about branding and taking risks, especially in the beginning, if you don't really know who your client is?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we will talk a little bit about people in a second, but that's a perfect question because I think in the beginning, we are experimenting, we're testing. And a lot of times, if someone's super clear about what their brand is, who they're serving, out the gate, they're going to probably invest some money in building that out. If you're not sure, I wouldn't get caught up in worrying about your brand being so tight because you're actually going to use that time to try working with different types of clients, see what clicks for them, what clicks for you. And in the end, like in a year or two, you're going to have a much clearer idea of the types of people you want to work with. And as you get clear, everything can get tighter. Your imagery, your language, all these different things. So I wouldn't be afraid of that whole taking risks part. That's where explore, treat it as an experiment. Take notes along the way of like, oh, it felt good working with this kind of person or this type of group. It did not feel good doing this type of service or working with this type of person. And that goes again back to having a strong point of view. Sometimes you're not going to have, you might have a strong point of view about your art, your creative, your craft, or whatever you're providing. But in terms of who you're working with, you don't have that yet because how would you? You don't know. You're just actually making choices from your best guess. So I think about, your brand and your business are going to evolve over time. I typically see people in a couple different camps. There's the people that are figuring it out, like what services really click, what kind of audience is really going to work for them. And so in a year or two, they're going to be much clearer and they're ready to invest in their branding and more things for their business. Like they may spend more money building their website or they may invest more time building it. In the beginning, it's like just having enough things there that are allowing you to get clients and talk to people. The second step way I see people is, like I said, people who, let's say someone's coming from a particular industry working for a company, and then they're going to go out on their own. Well, they already most likely know the kind of person that they want to work with. They're just leveraging that skill now for themselves, for their own business. So they may, out the gate, like I said, want to have something that really reflects it right away. And then the third thing I see is sometimes people start a business and whether they have a brand or not, their business grows and evolves, and maybe their brand hasn't caught up. And so 5 years down the line, all of a sudden, how many websites have you seen where they're outdated or the information's not relevant anymore? And they're getting clients, which is great, or they've got business going well, but it might be hindering them. Maybe their quality has improved, and yet their website still looks very DIY. And so then there's a mismatch. And that's where that pricing thing can come in, where if you look, you're skilled, you're advanced, and yet your branding looks very DIY, it might hold people back from paying you more money. And that's where I think like a brand audit can really help people, where it's like, hey, what's working, what needs to be improved, and what are the gaps and what are the things that we just need to refresh. So just look at it to me like a journey and not you have to get it perfect out the gate. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So if we go beyond professional, I think about it in this 3 words: purpose, personality, and people. So we're switching 1 P for 3. And I like to think about it as an inside out approach. So your purpose is at the center. Your personality, well, in this case, like the brand personality, the business personality, is the next level out. And then your most outer layer is the people. So thinking about the purpose category now. So the purpose is the mission of your business. I think so many times it can be easy to get caught up in like how to perfectly phrase our mission. So I like to think of these 3 questions, if you don't already have one, to get a little clearer. What are the core things you're committed to helping your clients, customers, audience with? What's the purpose of the business beyond the money? Like, why do you know, what are you trying to help people with? And what do you love providing to others? So if you don't have a mission or like, I think the word purpose makes it a little easier to think about it. Instead of mission can sound formal. It doesn't mean don't come up with a mission statement. But I think sometimes the way we language things can make it seem, again, like, we want everything to be professional. We want it to be polished. But at the same time, it's always about finding that starting point, communicating that purpose that you're wanting to help people with. So in my case, I'm going to give a couple examples. Branding that brings out the soul of your business. That's my purpose. How I do it, I have 3 core services in the way I do it. One's a 1-hour breakthrough session, branding BFF, one's an accelerator, and one's a brand audit. So I have 3 ways that I can deliver that purpose. Personality. So here, I, again, like these, more informal references, like your brand personality is your brand vibe. But we do ascribe human characteristics when we're thinking about a brand personality. Your brand tone of voice, that's the attitude that you're communicating, written and spoken. And then your style, that can be around what you're creating. It can be also what your brand looks like. So these all contribute to your vibe, your brand personality, and the things that are going to attract people specifically to your point of view. I mean, we were both at this conference at the beginning of the year, and the woman running the conference, she handed out little chocolate penises. She makes dick jokes, but that's on brand for her, whereas that wouldn't be on brand for me. So we thinking about like what can be seen as quote inappropriate for you could be very on brand for somebody else. And so thinking about that, hell yeah, hell no, you and your brand and your business may be polarizing. It's not like you need to try to be polarizing, but having a strong point of view allows people to have something to magnetize or to repel against. So in my case, mine's approachable, savvy, and soulful. That's my brand personality. My brand tone of voice, I actually spell it out. So when anything I'm communicating or working on, I always have this in the back of my head. My brand tone of voice is heartfelt. I'm passionate and earnest. I'm informal. I try to remove unnecessary jargon, or at least really clearly explain it in more informal terms. My brand tone of voice is informative. Like throughout here, my goal is always to share some new information that can be useful in a way to digest it. And then irreverent. So I'm not bringing irreverent really into this because this is more informative, informal, and heartfelt. But I use more irreverent in my marketing, not the extreme of like what Lauren does, but for me, I might use colloquial term. I might use pop culture in a subject line of an email. I use innuendo sparingly. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. I already referenced the fast fashion brand. So I use that as a way to describe the difference between someone who goes on Fiverr to get a logo versus the kind of work I do with people. That's a fast fashion and mine is not. I've said things like, is your brand a turn on or a turn off, right? Subject line in one of my email newsletters, are you memorable or meh? You probably heard me say meh before. It's using real language that feels like it coming from a different point of view, maybe. My podcast, I had a little mini series, which was Branding Quickies. And I named it Branding BFF because I basically want to be that person that feels like, your friend that you're talking to about things in really informal language and being straight up with them. And then one of my other posts was, I like it strong like my brands. And I was talking about coffee and strong branding and that kind of stuff. So these are just ways that I will use different languaging in my marketing that might attract people or stand out from the clutter a little more quickly. But yet the heart of stuff is still all the ways that you guys are hearing me speak tonight about this topic. So people, we started talking a little bit already about like who your ideal clients are, your audience. I do like to think about it from who do you want to work the most with? Because when you actually are working towards something that's your ideal, it doesn't mean you can't work with people that don't quite fit that, especially in early days. You may be taking on things, trying things that down the line, a year or two in, you might decide, you know what, those are not the type of people I want to work with. And you have more confidence and more clarity in order to make those decisions. Your audience is also going to be, you know, think about why did they pick you, your brand, your business, again, having that point of view, and what do you provide for them? So a lot of times, early days, my website, I remember I would like write things like, they need to understand this. This is what I'm providing. And it had no emotion and it wasn't putting myself in my client's shoes. So I think it's so important to put we want to come with our unique perspective, our unique point of view, but we're also thinking about what do my clients need to hear? What will help me put myself in their shoes? What's that connecting factor? So, you know, my people are coaches, consultants, creators, other professional service businesses. So I'm clear on that. You know, have I worked with nonprofits? Yes. Have I worked with product businesses? Yes. But that's not my sweet spot. And I get to choose if I want to say yes or no in a particular instance. But when you think about it like this, your brand is the bridge between you and your clients. So we talked a lot about, you know, your purpose, what you stand for with your brand. It's your vibe, the personality, their tone of voice, all these different things, and then your clients. And the brand is really that bridge in between. Like a lot of times people say, oh, you are your brand. And I actually disagree, because even if you're the face of your brand or your sole practitioner, your brand is distinct from you. And what it can do is allow it to have its own intentionality, its own presence, its own purpose, where you don't get collapsed with it. And so thinking about it this way actually can give you a little freedom. And because we all want to deliver that impact, you know, when we think about connecting with the people, to me, like a testimonial is the best, or a recommendation or review, referral. Those are the best things that let me know, like, my purpose, my brand, and I solved a need for my clients. And so when you get those testimonials, it can be the thing that helps validate it, and it's social proof. But it also, you can, by reading a testimonial, you can tell how someone works, you can tell what resonated for them, and you can tell a lot about the results. So I think that really keeping in mind the impact that you can make through your art, craft, service, product, really can help make sure that we don't get locked into any one thing, making it all about us, or making it all about the brand, or making it all about the client. Like, they all three need to work together to support each other. And I actually created a free brand essentials checklist. And this basically goes a little bit deeper into each of these 5 categories: brand strategy, brand language, visual brand, brand guide, and brand experience. There's 22 items. And this doesn't mean if you don't have everything done in this checklist, that somehow you don't have a good brand or you failed. It's more that this is a fully developed brand. This is one where all of these 5 areas are clearly mapped out, clearly understood, and are in place with your business. And as you grow, you can check them off. And in the end, these are the tools. Branding sets you up for marketing and sales. Branding is making sure that you know who you are, what you stand for, your distinct point of view. So then when we get to the marketing, you have clear brand messages, you have clear value propositions, you have all these clear things that you can actually put out into the world. And it also will make it easier with the sales. If we don't know who we are, how to talk about ourselves, if we don't have, I saw your elevator pitch coming up. Like if we can't communicate what we do clearly and succinctly, it's really hard for people to say yes. And so these are the things that I think are just, again, more tools for us, because in the end of the day, we want to make it easy for clients to say yes. Like that's been my mantra. It's like how you have your proposal process or your contracts or your discovery sessions or whatever you want to call it, you thinking about it as an arc. So I want my brand to do as much heavy lifting as it can. I want to have steps along the way that I can make it easy at multiple points for people to say yes to things. I have an example of like a coaching client, they're 6-month coaching packages. Great. But what are people getting for that? Coaching can sound and look all the same if we don't communicate and give it a framework for people to connect to. The more things that we can give people to connect to, starting with the brand, the easier it is to move them along that journey to saying yes and hiring you. So you can just use the QR code to get the free checklist. And I'm totally for this group. Like I don't normally do like unlimited discovery sessions for people, but it's not about trying to sell something. I want you guys to use that time. If you have, deeper questions than what we have time for tonight, if you have like, I want to hear specific questions you guys have tonight about your brand and your business. I'm happy to answer any of it, but like if we don't have time, we can't go deep enough in that time. I really want to be a resource for you guys to think about how to take all of this. Let's say you do your brand essentials checklist. Use that time to be like, hey, I don't know what you mean by this, or these are things that are missing in my business. When's the right time to do that? Because like we were talking about earlier, this is not like, hey, you have to do this stuff tomorrow. It's like about finding the time and the place in your business to introduce new tools, new ways to support and to connect with clients. So what questions do you guys have? And I'm happy to go back to any slides if we want to reference any of them.
Thank you, Lisa. This was really informative and gives us a lot to think about. If folks, we have a couple minutes, so we would love to take some time and ask questions. Yes, drop them in the chat. Lisa, do you have access to the chat? I can read the questions out loud if that's helpful.
Sure. I wasn't sure if it was going to cover up anything. Okay, so I've read several articles stating that if you have a small business, you should focus on one product versus a variety of items, that it could make it difficult for your audience to understand your brand. Do you find this to be true? I think that when you think about your products and services, I think there's always going to be like a core either entry point for people. So a core entry point or a key service, product or service. And you can think about it as, again, like an ecosystem. So for example, like I offer multiple things, but they're all designed to bring out the soul of your brand. Sorry, the brand to bring out the soul of your business. If your products are helping your same audience, and maybe it's helping them at a different stage or they are complementing each other, I would just think about what would be confusing for people and try to do everything you can to eliminate any confusion. So for some people, they serve two audiences. So on their website, like on my homepage, I have new businesses, established businesses. If your products are two different phases of someone's life, it's for the new mom or the mom who's, kids are in high school. I'm just trying to think of just different categories to make it a little clearer. But I think that the main thing is if you understand how to explain it in a way that your audience is going to understand it, that's the most important thing. But I do think if you're a new business, sometimes you do want to test out one product or service first to make sure that you iron out any kinks, and then you can expand your offerings. Okay, next one. I'm interested in the process of how to choose your colors. A lot of times people do it based on personal preferences and choice. There's a lot of articles you can read about color psychology, and you can decide how much you want to buy into that or not. You can decide to pick colors that are different than what everybody in your industry is doing. Like a lot of banks are going to go for blue because it's all about reliability, stability. But I think it's Ally Bank that's purple. So they're intentionally trying to stand out. Um, if you think about things in the like health sustainability space, a lot of stuff will be in the green because they're wanting to, carry that image through. But then all of a sudden you might see all the businesses are using green. And do you really want to do that? Can you actually communicate what you're trying to accomplish maybe through something different than the color and pick a color that stands out from your competitors? So I like to think about, I'm not a global business. I do, have had clients in Cayman Islands, but I'm mostly in America. But I always think about like, who are my most direct competitors in Charlotte? Because the majority of my business is in Charlotte. So I would go through the process of seeing what I would consider my top competitors, whether they're aspirational or actual competitors, and make sure that whatever I'm doing isn't going to make any market confusion. If your nearest competitors are in, red and orange, well, maybe consider, doing purple or green, or blue or something that makes sure that it doesn't get too close. Is that helpful? Trying to think about answering it multiple different angles.
No, it was very helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hadley says, this was excellent. I'm in the throes of rebranding and redoing my decade-old website, breaking into the Charlotte photo scene after working for other companies in New York City. Signing up for Discovery Call. Awesome. So there's not a question. Yeah, I think like rebranding and redoing, it's really great to think about what do you want to carry forward, or is this like a clean break and a fresh start? Sometimes people just keep a name and then visually everything changes. Sometimes I think what's cool is your tagline can change more easily than your business name can change. So sometimes thinking about something that, let's say photography is in your business name, but you may want to expand into video someday or something. So just kind of thinking about where you're headed, not just where you're at right now. And I'm happy to talk to you in that discovery session. Tony, love that. Okay, awesome. Any other questions that came up through any of this, like anything specific to your industry, your
Hey, Lisa.
business? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question actually. I'm so I feel like a lot of brands are based on like the font, like the brand because you know the font, like Dunkin' Donuts, Disney, like so many. And I'm curious about like how like what's the like the copyright legal thing with that? Like if you're just making a brand in like Adobe Express or Canva or whatever, like if you're using their icons and you're using their fonts, like how
Great
careful
question.
do you have to be about that? Or like are there specific fonts you can and can't? You like does that kind of make sense? How does
Yeah,
that
it
work?
totally makes sense. So first off, in Canva, if you're using any kind of icons that anyone else can use, it's not proprietary. So it can create market confusion. So if you're like, oh, wow, that drawing looks so cool, it makes me think of, someone's got a spa, or I don't know, what's your industry?
So I'm still figuring that out, but like
Okay,
I'm kind of like illustration, so I feel like
okay,
I would just hand draw like whatever I end up using,
perfect.
but it would be nice to like start somewhere.
Yeah. So what you could do is start with like, what your illustration style or range is. I would think about if you were somebody who's doesn't have the skill that you do, someone might go into Canva and they might find a drawing or an icon of something that they want to use. Just be aware that anybody else can be using that too. So it's not going to be unique to your brand or your business. Secondly, about the fonts. So in this case, in some ways, sometimes it's better to let that come later and just, stick with something simple, because I personally would prefer not to be confused with somebody else out there using that same icon. Secondly, talking about fonts. So yeah, if you are trying to rip off Disney and your word, your business starts with a D and you're mimicking that, you better believe they're probably going to come after you for copyright stuff. So I wouldn't try to, it's a lot, I'm not a lawyer, but I know intellectual property attorneys, it's like if it creates market confusion, that's a real issue. So that's where, a lawyer can help you if you feel like you're entering in unknown territory, like, oh, is this too close? That person's going to be able to help you. But I think about the fonts, like let's just go back for a second. Whoops, hang on, let me go back. So one of the reasons why I was showing you guys a bunch of stuff is to show, hang on, let's get back there. Oh, there we go. So one of the things that I try to do is either have something that's unique with the font. So like I customized this X in Flexi. I created this unique shape, the transparency, and Flexi, it kind of helps support the idea of the name. John Joseph, this had a dual purpose. Most people misspell his name and they think it's PH. So we purposely drew some attention to the F and did it in a unique way that it would catch your eye, but it also, you can still read it. In the case of like Shine at Work, I didn't alter the font because I had this icon that was custom. Matt, of course, customized that with the exclamation mark. Margit, that was customizing the M. So that was a unique special M that followed the shape of the hummingbird. Crescents, it was building that crest of a wave into the sea. So even little things that can just make it be a little bit more unique, like the hub, just altering the B to be vertical with using the gradient. That's a pretty standard font. That's Montserrat. Anybody can access that on Canva or, most Squarespace, most web platforms. So I'm not opposed to using fonts that are familiar or easy, because it is a way, if you're building your own site, to tie things together. Cindy Pearson coaching, like I customized the P to make it a little more unique and kind of connect that space a little more. So there's little things you can do if you have the right software. In my case, it's Illustrator, to make it a little more custom or to curve the type or different things. But in every case, it's that combination of the font, if there's something you do to customize it, the colors, the choices, and then especially if there's an icon. But in many cases, like with Flexi, if we'd done an icon, a standalone icon, it would have been unnecessary and it might have distracted from the X. And so then the X is actually the icon that they can use for social and all those things. The H for the hub. So all these things you can actually take, like the C for crescents. Like I'm not going to put the whole icon, the whole logo in an icon for social. You'd never be able to read it, or the little favicons at the top of your web browser. So there's all these little things that we can do to make something a little more special, even if we're not illustrating something ourselves or so on.
Thank you. Yeah, that was super helpful.
Great. Let's see, we've got something else in the chat. Okay. How long do your clients take on average to create a business name? I'm working on rebranding and have been struggling to come up with something that I feel represents my brand mission. Did not realize how hard it would be, especially when so many names have already been taken. Yeah, I think that's where there's two things. I think it can take a long time when you're just doing it by yourself, because you're not necessarily, you can get like very stuck on thinking about things one way. So I try to think about things in different buckets. Like, okay, do I want my name in it? Do I want it to be a made up word? Do I want it to be a mashup of two words? Do I want it to be like Flexi? That's expressive, but it doesn't tell you exactly what the business is, but you can be thinking about it. So like I have a whole thing around, like I have 5 different categories that or 5 or 6 that I typically think through when I'm doing business naming. Operate had to do with alignment. So it can take a long time or it can take a short amount of time. I think the thing is, sometimes it's helpful to have a brainstorm partner if you can't afford working with someone who does business naming. And then the last thing I would say on that is there is, oh, man, I think I'm trying to think of what it's called. USPTO.gov. Oh, it's TESS, TESS. There's a section on USPTO.gov where you can actually search to see what's been trademarked. You can kind of see, are there people in your industry that are using that name? This is not to replace checking with the lawyer, but it is one thing that you can do as a preliminary way to potentially weed out things. So instead of trying to come up with the perfect name, I try to come up with like 20 names and then start critiquing and editing. Okay, Tim, you had a question?
Oh, I was just going to add something. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Been weird today. On the branding thing, I would just advise folks like where I'd even be more concerned almost than brand similarity, because how much, I don't think you want to have a logo that looks like somebody else's, but I would say be more careful about when you're building marketing materials or you're doing social media or whatever, you're going to get tagged more for using like rights protected photography. And so just, there's a difference, the brand mark is one thing, but then as you build out your image and your brand through visuals, make sure you either own that photography or you're using rights-free photography, because I've seen more people in trouble the other way.
Yeah, so pexels.com is a place you can get free photos. If you have like a Canva Pro account, you have access to a lot of the photography that you can use because they're basically licensing it to you through Canva. Yeah, I'd be really, really careful about using photography unless it's from a site that says you can use this. Otherwise, they have like, it's amazing. They have digital embedding things where they can totally go after you. So if it's like a Getty image, like they can go after you very easily because they have the data. Okay, let's see. Do we have another comment? Namelix.com. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. I'll take note of that. I'm going to copy that for sure. I mean, AI, there's a lot of people that use ChatGPT for stuff. I think the biggest thing with naming too is the more unique it is, the more easy it is to trademark. So for example, branding BFF, I paid to have a registered trademark of that because I thought that's something people are going to want to copy. It's a service I offer and it's a podcast I used to run. So, thinking about most cases, it's not that I needed to do it, but I wanted to do it because I felt like it was such a unique and distinct name. I didn't want other people to start copying it. But in general, like the more distinct it is, the more likely that it can stand on its own and isn't going to be like something else out there. So, for example, Crescents, again, that's a mashup. And sometimes just making up a word like Haagen-Dazs was made up, Margix made up. There's reasons why people make things up. It's so that you can build the story behind it and not have to worry about someone else using something similar.
I have a question if we have time for it.
Yeah.
So my business is is my name, so it's autumnpain.art. So could you just speak to like just advice on how to continue building branding based off of your name, or like just pro tips for how to do that? Because I'm an artist, so I work predominantly in my art form, so I am my artwork. My artwork is me, so it benefits both to put my name in there, but just like learning like the website side and like the social media and the marketing, the branding, like all of that. Just if you have any pro tips and like how to continue pushing that forward, because I want them to see my logo, and because my logo is the same as my signature on my pots, and so like I
Okay.
feel like we're getting there, but I'd
Yeah.
love to get your opinion on how to even push that forward.
I would think about like, what's your tone of voice? What are like, do you have a tagline? Is there something descriptive phrase that you can use over and over, whether it's an actual tagline or just a description of your work? It's building those connection points. So it's not a, perfect like list of do these 3 things that'll happen, but being consistent with your colors, your fonts, like using that handwritten of your name, because similar messaging, those things can start building that relationship that people, oh, that's coming from her. Okay, Tim, you had one quick thing?
Yeah, one other thing about just trademarking and registering, just want to make sure that people also realize that if you go to that effort, and I know Lisa has this kind of, has this wherewithal to do it, you have to defend that brand mark. So it's, if you go to the effort to either copyright or trademark something, whatever, the onus is on you to police it and make sure nobody else steals it or uses it. I know this from my times with Brick's Wood Fired Pizza. Like, there are mom and pop stores across the country that would call themselves Bricks or Bricks Pizza, or literally steal our logo at some point. And in order to preserve your brand mark, you have to actively defend it against them and send them, you can't let that kind of stuff go. So if you get it, you have to be vigilant about making sure other people aren't copying you.
And sometimes, again, like people will put a TM on something for, it's basically supposed to be when a trademark is in process of getting approved. And then the circle R is when it's actually a registered trademark. So the main thing for me in doing it, like, I don't have the money to pursue court cases, but I did pay the money to have that circle R, and that's like that, oh, hey, this woman's invested in it, right? So it's just a little bit of a warning sign for people that I've actually registered it with the government. So don't be scared that, feel like you have to trademark register everything. And also, most of us small business owners, like, we won't have the money to pursue those kind of things unless your business is, bringing in a certain type of revenue that you have the time and the means to pursue these kind of things. So again, trademark registration is an option, but don't be feeling like I have to do it and I have to do it at this stage. A lawyer will tell you you do, but all of us can't afford that at every stage of our business.
What's great is that the lawyer that's coming to speak with us in a couple of weeks, you did her work. So it's Karen Schiller Boardman with Alignment Legal. So you all saw Karen's branding here just a minute ago. But Lisa, we are, everyone, we're at 7 o'clock. So unless we have like one more question or thought, we're probably going to wrap up the evening. But Lisa, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time to offer up the brand essential checklist, for offering the complimentary discovery session, and taking time tonight to offer up your advice and expertise. To everyone who made it out tonight, thank you for coming to another Creative Convo. Please continue coming. Please continue to stay connected with us. We have so many more of these throughout the year. We have a lot of our in-person events. If you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat. Another thing I'll just put out there is that if you have topics that you want to learn more about, that you want to hear about, then let us know. We can arrange for creative convos around these topics. If you're an expert in your field and you want to give a creative convo, please reach out. I am throwing my email in the chat, but you all must have it by now. All right. But thank you all so much for coming. Lisa, thank you again. For everyone who came, we'll send out the deck and the recording as well. But we hope that you all have a really great evening.
Thanks,
Oh.
Lisa.
You're welcome. Someone just asked for the QR codes again. Hang on. Just
And everybody come to Reciprocity Circle, sign up for it next Saturday. It's gonna be
it's
awesome.
so good.
I
It's so
bet
good.
be there.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa.
My pleasure.
Bye, Lisa. Thank you.
I'm just leaving it up for another second. in
No
case.
worries. I won't end the meeting yet.
Okay, perfect.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you so much. I'll grab, if you want to, I'll grab let me end the recording really quick.
Yeah.